Hey guys, Lord Naren White here, the Holy Ghost, the one true God. Back with you with the next video in my series reading Oliver Twist by Charles Dickens. Without further ado, returning to Oliver Twist as read by Lord Naren White. Nancy quickly brought a bottle from a cupboard in which there were many, which, to judge from the diversity of their appearance, were filled several kinds of liquids. Sikes, pouring out a glass of brandy, bade the Jew drink it off. "Quite enough, quite, thank ye, Bill," replied the Jew, putting down the glass after just setting his lips to it. "What? You're afraid of our getting the better of you, are you?" inquired Sikes, fixing his eyes on the Jew. "Ugh!" With a hoarse grunt of contempt, Mr. Sikes seized the glass and threw the remainder of its contents into the ashes, as a preparatory ceremony to filling it again for himself, which he did at once. The Jew glanced round the room as his companion tossed down the second glassful, not in curiosity, for he had seen it often before, but in a restless and suspicious manner habitual to him. It was a meanly furnished apartment, with nothing but the contents of the closet to induce the belief that its occupier was anything but a working man, and with no more suspicious articles displayed to view than 2 or 3 heavy bludgeons, which stood in a corner, and a life-preserver that hung over the chimney-piece. "There," said Sikes, smacking his lips. "Now I'm ready." "For business?" inquired the Jew. "For business," replied Sikes. So say what you've got to say." "About the crib at Chertsey, Bill," said the Jew, drawing his chair forward, and speaking in a very low voice. "Yes, what about it?" inquired Sikes. "Ah, you know what I mean, my dear," said the Jew. "He knows what I mean. Nancy, don't he?" "No, he don't," sneered Sikes. "Or he won't. That's the same thing. Speak out and call things by their right names. Don't sit there, winking and blinking, and talking to me in hints, as if you weren't the very first that thought about the robbery. What do you mean?" "Hush, Bill, hush," said the Jew, who had in vain attempted to stop this burst of indignation. "Somebody will hear us, my dear. Somebody will hear us." "Let him hear," said Sikes. "I don't care." But as Mr. Sikes did care, on reflection, he dropped his voice and said the words and grew calmer. There, said the Jew coaxingly. "It was only my caution, nothing more. Now, my dear, about that crib at Chertsey. When is it to be done, Bill, eh? When is it to be done? Such plate, my dear, such plate," said the Jew, rubbing his hands and elevating his eyebrows in a rapture of anticipation. "Not at all," replied Sikes coldly. "Not to be done at all?" echoed the Jew, leaning back in his chair. "No, not at all," rejoined Sikes. "At least it can't be a put-up job, as we expected." "Then it hasn't been properly gone about," said the Jew, turning pale with anger. "Don't tell me." "But I will tell you," retorted Sikes. "Who are you that's not to be told? I tell you that Toby Crackit has been hanging about the place for a fortnight, and he can't get one of the servants in line." "Do you mean to tell me, Bill," said the Jew, softening as the other grew heated, "that neither of the 2 men in the house can be got over?" "Yes, I do mean to tell you so," replied Sikes. "The old lady has had him in these 20 years. And if you were to give me £500, they wouldn't be in it." "But do you mean to say, my dear," remonstrated the Jew, "that the woman can't be got over?" "Not a bit of it," replied Sikes. "Not by Flash Toby Crackit?" said the Jew incredulously. "Think what women are, Bill." "No, not even by Flash Toby Crackit," replied Sikes. "He says he's worn sham whiskers and a canary waistcoat. The whole blessed time he's been loitering down there, and it's all of no use. He should have tried mustachios and a pair of military trousers, my dear, said the Jew. So he did, rejoined Sikes. And they weren't of no more use than the other plant. The Jew looked blank at this information. After ruminating for some minutes, with his chin sunk on his breast, he raised his head and said with a deep sigh that if Flash Toby Crackit reported aright, he feared the game was up. And yet, said the old man, dropping his knees on his hands, it's a sad thing, my dear, to lose so much when we had set our hearts upon it. So it is, said Mr. Sikes. Worse luck. A long silence ensued, during which the Jew was plunged in deep thought, with his face wrinkled into expression of villainy, perfectly demoniacal. Sikes eyed him furtively from time to time. Nancy, apparently fearful of irritating the housebreaker, sat with her eyes fixed upon the fire as if she had been deaf to all that passed. Fagin, said Sikes, abruptly breaking the stillness that prevailed, is it worth 50 shiners extra, if it's safely done from the outside? Yes, said the Jew, as suddenly rousing himself. Is it a bargain? Inquired Sikes. Yes, my dear, yes, rejoined the Jew, his eyes glistening, and every muscle in his face working, with the excitement that the inquiry had awakened. Then, said Sikes, thrusting aside the Jew's hand with some disdain, let it come off as soon as you like. Toby and me were over the garden wall the night afore last, sounding the panels of the crack of the door and shutters. The crib's barred up at night like a jail, but there's one part we can crack safe and softly. Which is that, Bill? Said the Jew eagerly. Why, whispered Sikes, as you cross the lawn, yes, said the Jew, bending his head forward with his eyes almost starting out of it. Humph! Cried Sikes, stopping short, as the girl, scarcely moving her head, looked suddenly round and pointed for an instant to the Jew's face. Never mind which part it is. You can't do it without me, I know, but it's best bet to be on the safe side when one deals with you. As you like, my dear, as you like, replied the Jew. Is there no help wanted, but yours and Toby's? None, said Sikes, except a center bit and a boy. The first we've both got, the second you must find us. A boy? Exclaimed the Jew. Oh, then it's a panel, eh? Never mind what it is, replied Sikes. I want a boy, and he must be a big un, Lord, said Mr. Sikes reflectively. If I'd only got that young boy of Ned, the chimbley sweeper's. He kept him small on purpose and let him out by the job. But the father gets lagged, and the juvenile delinquent society comes and takes the boy away from a trade where he was earning money, teaches him to read and write, and in the time makes apprentice of him, and so they go on, said Mr. Sikes, his wrath arising with the recollection of wrongs. So they go on, and if they'd got money enough, which is a providence they haven't, we shouldn't have half a dozen boys left in the whole trade in a year or two. No more we should, acquiesced the Jew, who had been considering during this speech, and had only caught the last sentence. Bill! What now? Inquired Sikes. The Jew nodded his head towards Nancy, who was still gazing at the fire, and intimated by a sign that he would have told her not to leave the room. Sikes shrugged his shoulders impatiently, as if he thought the precaution unnecessary, but complied nevertheless by requesting Miss Nancy to fetch him a jug of beer. You don't want any beer, said Nancy, folding her arms, and retaining her seat very composedly. I tell you I do, replied Sikes, and we'll go ahead and stop there for this week. As usual, I want to say thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. Please like, comment, and subscribe, as it greatly helps the channel. Light be with you all. Take care, and thanks again.